Okay, we finally got some info on the next Destiny 2 expansion called the Edge of Fate, which, yes, I know there's so much edging in Destiny 2. It's quite literally insane, and yeah, it's another meme. And speaking of memes, is this going to be make or break for Destiny as a franchise, maybe even Bungie as a studio? And if I had a nickel for every time I saw someone say this, I would be very rich. It's a meme more so than it is a reality, and I'm gonna tell you why. I'm a firm believer in looking at statistics to try and help make sense of some things. Now, some numbers can be misleading, and I think if you look at the concurrent player chart for the past year, that's what you're gonna run into, right? For most of the episode's lifespans, it's mostly content that's been wrung dry, so to speak. You know, episodes where we're just tidying up these loose ends in the story of the Light and Dark saga that has taken up the narrative for way too long, and that's why these threads got tied up, and we're done with that now. And you saw a lot of interest lost in the game, and after Final Shape, kind of like, what's the point? Everything's done for now until this new expansion comes out. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about Lightfall. It's nothing negative. I'm not trying to beat the dead horse because it's been kicked and thrown off a cliff and dug 20 feet into the ground at this point. But Lightfall broke the concurrent player record on the Steam charts. We can only imagine what Xbox and PlayStation was like that day as well. It was probably north of 1 million players, because it was about 300,000 for Steam. So if you did that per platform, that's almost 1 million players. So okay, a little bit below 1 million concurrent players. The reason it did that is because Witch Queen, the prior DLC, was amazing and elevated the story to probably the best we've had in game at that point since Forsaken. Which Forsaken came out in 2018, Witch Queen came out in 2022, I think? Yeah, that sounds right. So, just to put that into perspective, Witch Queen gave everyone confidence in Bungie, and that's why everyone pre-ordered Lightfall, and people were telling other people, like, Witch Queen's great, you gotta come play it. So you get into Witch Queen, you're excited, the game feels great, the story's good, there's a cool raid with this really cool villain called Rolk, who honestly has been so simped in the community. It's insane. I know so many people who would love to just, ruin his Lubre, I guess. But regardless of that, that built up an immense amount of hype for Lightfall. And then Lightfall fell backwards. It was horrible. At least in comparison to Witch Queen, which is like comparing apples to oranges. I know I've probably said that a lot recently, but it's true. It's not fair to Lightfall because it didn't get the time that it needed like Witch Queen did. So the question for us now is, are we falling back into the same issue? Because Lightfall did so bad, the faith and the trust and confidence in Bungie was at an all-time low. And nobody pre-ordered the Final Shape, and that's when the first rounds of layoffs happened. I could be wrong, but layoffs did happen a lot over the past 2 years, so cut me some slack, okay? I'm spitballing here. Those layoffs happened, there weren't enough pre-orders, there was some, arbitrary revenue threshold that Bungie had it made internally, and it was bad. So they end up laying off a lot of employees in order to, stay afloat. And Final Shape is an absolute banger. It was on pace to break Lightfall's concurrent record. Final Shape finished around 314,000, Lightfall at about 316,000. But of course, on launch day for Final Shape, these servers were an absolute mess, which probably didn't help that number at all. Not that it matters, but even after the failure of Lightfall, Bungie built that trust back up again with Into the Light and a whole bunch of other things, and people were confident heading into the Final Shape that it was going to be good, and it was. and that faith was proven right. So is the Edge of Fate going to be Lightfall, in a sense that we just had a banger, right? And now we're set up for the not banger DLC. And I think that Bungie will make a lot more money with this expansion than they did with the previous two. I could be wrong. I could be wrong about this, but I'm fairly confident because, again, of how good the final shape was. Now, obviously, it depends on how good the reveal is and if it's interesting enough for people to come back and play the game. People who put down the final shape and said, well, that was a fun 10 years. I'm going to go play Monster Hunter or something else along those lines to fill my time until we get the next big thing. And the reason why I can't trust the statistics fully is that we truly are in uncharted waters because it's been 10 years and franchise fatigue is real. So that does mean there is a challenge for Bungie ahead, and can they change things and keep things fresh while also ensuring that they don't change too much, because then you're going to sully the entire dedicated player base's faith in you yet again. Well, it depends on the severity of the change, but I do think that change does need to happen, especially because, again, 10 years is a long time for any game to exist, and sometimes it's not change in terms of how the game works and how it feels, but how it's made. And they said they're going to do that. You know, we'll see, obviously, in May what that change looks like with the reveal happening. Of course, I'll be here covering it, probably streaming it that day, and talking about it live. And we're heading to even more unstable waters, so to speak, with the release of Marathon, as Bungie tries to work Destiny around it so that, the community as a whole can dabble in both and at least give Marathon a try and see if it's something that, you'd enjoy playing, because, that's just how business works. You don't want to compete with yourself. They're already competing with Borderlands 4 on Marathon's launch day, so the reason I don't think it'll be make or break, mostly though, is the numbers. I have faith in the numbers. I do think this DLC will be up there with Lightfall and Final Shape in terms of the numbers that matter. Now, pre-orders are a completely different thing. I assume the price point of this DLC is going to be a little bit smaller, maybe not. It's tough to tell because there are two separate expansions set to come out in Frontiers. We know that the Edge of Fate was codename Apollo, and we still have yet to figure out what codename Behemoth is. So again, it's going to be hard to tell. I can imagine it being around $40 to $50 still, though, because it's probably going to be a decent amount of content with some kind of annual pass costing around $80 to $100. So not horrible, because you pay $100 once a year to be able to play this game. I guess it depends on your perspective of, do you enjoy this game or not? And for anyone who plays it now and consistently, will probably tell you it is. I think Bungie's in a good position to use the hype of Marathon to their advantage, and that's probably why they waited until now to release the name of the expansion, was to build on the hype that happened during the gameplay reveal for the extraction shooter Marathon. So kind of a smart play. The marketing team at Bungie is phenomenal, and I'm sure that department will do its job. It's really just a question of, have the devs had long enough to polish everything in this expansion and Behemoth to a point where it's really good? And if they haven't, then yeah, it'll be tough. But the good news about having these two smaller expansions is that you can bounce back pretty quickly if you're Bungie. It's kind of like getting knocked down in the ring, but you get right back up and start punching again. So it's really just up to how they manage this, if they're doing it right, both by the players and the devs, listening to feedback, listening to what everyone wants and what everyone thinks is best for the game. At least, the overwhelming community consensus for a lot of things that exist in the game right now. I can talk about those issues at length, but I will spare you guys in this video because that's not what it's about. But regardless, I'm excited to see what's happening. We do know that the Edge of Fate will be about the 9 in some capacity, and we kind of already knew that because of some tidbits here and there in certain lore tabs. But they have been an organization that has barely been touched on throughout the history of Destiny, at least in-game. Of course, we've had interactions with the Emissary of the 9, as well as your boy Xur popping up every week and posting up every week. He is amazing, God bless Xur. But we haven't really had interactions with the other part of the 9, because, you know, there are some guys in the 9, or people in the 9, that want to help us. They're the people that sent the Emissary and Xur. But there are some jabronis out there that want to do the opposite, and I can only imagine that that's what's going to happen in the Edge of Fate. Maybe we'll edge them, and that's how we save the universe this time around, but I kind of hope not. That's a little gross. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about this. Subscribe if you are looking for some coverage of this content down the line. Like the video if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see ya.